Last week, two Ohio State football players went to trial and were found not guilty of kidnapping and raping a 19-year-old woman. Let's talk about the details. My name is Jamal Kersey. I'm the principal attorney at Kersey Law, a boutique criminal defense firm in San Diego, California. And in this video, we're talking about the trial that happened last week involving two former Ohio State football players, Amir, Riep and Jahsen Wint. So they had been arrested back in 2020. So on February 11th, 2020, they were arrested and charged with 2 counts of rape and 1 count of kidnapping. So obviously very serious charges. You know, there's obviously a huge stigma that comes along with rape charges and you know, naturally so, or we should say people who are convicted of rape. Obviously you can be accused and then ultimately acquitted like these gentlemen were. But you know, when it comes to rape and sexual assault, there's major stigmas around those. And so unfortunately, both of these gentlemen were kicked off the team. So they were at Ohio State playing football. They got kicked off the team a day after they got arrested. And, you know, there's 2 sides to every story. Sometimes people say there's 3 sides, you know, side A, side B, and then what the truth is. But in this situation, Mr. Riep had met the accuser, and you know, we don't know her name. Her name has been you know, protected and redacted from all the news articles, and they've just done a good job, obviously, of keeping her identity under wraps, while you know, Mr. Riep and Mr. Wint, you know, even after being acquitted, are still having to deal with the after effects of such an inflammatory accusation. So Mr. Riep had met this girl on Snapchat back in December of 2019, right? And her story was that she was having consensual sex with Amir Riep. So she had gone back to his apartment. They were having consensual sex, and that's when Jahsen Wint came into the room and they both forced her into sex. So that was basically the essence of what her story was. And so the prosecutor basically argued that when she had gone to this apartment, she was expecting to hang out with Amir, and then all of a sudden, both of these guys violently raped her. So again, inflammatory facts, you know, and this is something that, you know, you see in the news, you see on the internet, you see the headlines, and everyone is quick to judgment. And, you know, this is the importance of having trials and the importance of the presumption of innocence and requiring proof beyond a reasonable doubt in this trial system. So again, with there being 2 sides to every story, both Jahsen and Amir had conceded that they both had sex with her, but their position was that everything was consensual. Obviously, there, you know, is nothing illegal about 2 men having sex with 1 woman. And, you know, as long as there's consent, then there's nothing wrong with that. As part of the evidence, and I think this was a very crucial piece of evidence and probably one of the things that the jury ultimately hung their hat on, and that was a video that was played in court in which the alleged victim said that the sex was consensual. And, you know, props to whoever was on, you know, the athletic staff, who basically, Amir Riep and another Ohio State football player, they had both testified and said, hey, you know, our staff had told us that if we have sex with girls on campus or girls in general, that it would be wise for us to get them on video or on audio saying that, hey, this encounter was, you know, was consensual. And, you know, you can imagine how that might make for, you know, awkward conversation, right? You know, you just had sex with a girl and you're telling her, hey, you know, can I just get you on camera saying that, you know, this was consensual, there's no problems. That actually, you know, it's going to take away from the romance, if you will. But, you know, if Riep and Wint didn't have this video, it's possible that, you know, this case could have gone in another direction. And so it's very fortunate that they had this as evidence in their arsenal. When you ask yourself, okay, if this was a consensual encounter, how did we get here? How do we end up with these two men being accused of rape and kidnapping this female? What the lawyers argued at trial was that again, this was a consensual sexual encounter, but that the woman regretted it afterwards, right? So, and this is college, right? This is college. People are finding themselves. You have people exploring their sexuality, and maybe it was something that she had sex with this one football player, wanted to have sex with the other one, and then afterwards, perhaps it could have been the recording of the video. It could have been any reason that she ultimately, felt bad about it afterwards or regretted it afterwards. But the issue is that just because you end up regretting sex afterwards doesn't mean that the sexual encounter that you had was not consensual, right? And, it's not illegal for you to have sex with somebody and then they regret it afterwards. What would be illegal is if it was not consensual. And again, these players' position was that this was actually consensual. And so part of the accusation on the part of the defense was that this was pushed forward by the alleged victim's father. So somehow he ends up finding out about what happened, and he's the one that pushed her, you need to report this to the police. And he's the one that leaned on probably the police and the DA to push criminal charges forward. When you have this type of pressure from an alleged victim and and parents that are just very adamant that no, my daughter would never want something like this. You need to charge these individuals. You need to arrest them. That can put a lot of pressure on detectives and DAs to potentially push a case forward that they might not otherwise be inclined to push forward. If there's anything to really take from this video, because, you may be a young man watching this, or you may be a parent that has a young man that you need to, make sure that they understand how the law works and what they could be up against. I've represented multiple college athletes with cases like this, where they're being accused of having acted inappropriately, and their position is that, I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was have consensual sexual relations with a girl, and now for whatever reason, because they thought we were going to be in a relationship, and for me it was just sex, they get mad and then accuse me of rape, or they just out of spite. There's all kinds of reasons why, after the fact, what was an actual consensual encounter, where these guys end up getting accused of acting inappropriately. So you just really have to be careful. And especially when we're talking about college campuses and young adults, you have to be careful about drinking alcohol, right? And so, we can say, the law says that, if you're under 21, you shouldn't drink. And, we can say that, don't drink, it's illegal, if you're under 21. The reality is, kids are going to do what they're going to do, right? And you are going to have underage drinking. And so, when that happens, if you're going to engage in sexual relations, you have to be careful. You have to be careful, and you have to make sure that there is consent, right? Because if you don't have consent, then that's considered rape. Or if there's not actual sex, then it can be considered a sexual assault. And it's also important to remember that consent can be withdrawn, right? So two people can be engaged in sexual relations. There was, no problems. They're both consenting adults having sex. And then one of them can say, stop, or I don't want this anymore. And to the extent anything is communicated that consent is no longer there, then you have to stop. If you don't stop, then even though things started consensually, that can be considered rape. It's also worth considering that a person can be too intoxicated to provide consent. And so if you're in a situation where, it's questionable whether that person is really able to give consent, then it's better to play it safe and just stop, right? you you live to see another day, right? There's always going to be another opportunity. In this particular case, I mean, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. That is a very short amount of time for a case of this magnitude. And what that lets me know is that, whatever they saw, whether it was that video or it was the testimony from Amir Riep, because it's my understanding that he actually took the stand and testified. But they were able to see through this prosecution. They were able to see through this case and really ultimately find that these kids were not guilty. And I'm just really, really happy that for these guys, this case is behind them, right? So they still have a lot that they have to deal with in the aftermath of being charged with kidnapping and rape. But it's just in terms of the case and having, potentially over 30 years hanging over their head if they were found guilty, you can best believe that ever since they were arrested, that they just had this cloud over their head, knowing that even though from their perspective they are innocent, even knowing that there is the presumption of innocence, even knowing that the prosecution has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, they were still facing that time hanging over their head. And that is extremely scary. It is very scary to know that based on an interaction that may have lasted a few minutes in your life, that can result in your whole, young adulthood being thrown down the drain. And that's a very scary prospect. But yeah, again, I mean, even though this case is over, they're no longer being prosecuted, they're still feeling the effects of this situation. And the unfortunate thing is, again, they were both kicked off the team. I mean, they had a chance to get into Ohio State University. They say the Ohio State University, and that's a major college football program. And so they had to have been good, excellent high school athletes to make it onto the team. I don't know, how much they played or not, or what have you, but they lost something that was really important and dear to them, the privilege to be able to play football, and it's just really unfortunate. But it does sound like they're both focused on their education. Amir Riep, he is majoring in sports management. He has 2 semesters left, and he'll be able to graduate from Ohio State University. And actually, Jahsen Wint had already finished his degree program, right? So he was studying human development. He finished the program back in 2020, but Ohio State was holding on to his degree pending the outcome of this case. And that's something that a lot of people don't actually know. I've represented quite a few people who were in either just an undergraduate university program or a master's program. And a lot of these schools have morality clauses, right? And so if you end up getting convicted of certain crimes, then they can kick you out of the school, hold on to your degree. Like in this situation, there are so many ways that criminal charges can end up having a negative impact on your life, whether you're in college or, on the job. There's a lot of companies that if you get convicted of certain things that you can lose your job. So lose your livelihood, lose your ability to provide for yourself and your family. So this is a really big deal. And again, at the end of the day, just the social stigma of being accused of rape, right? So even though these guys are able to walk away and say that, hey, we went to trial on this, we were found not guilty, there's still, for all that time, right? These guys, they got arrested in 2020, in February of 2020, and now, we're just now in February of 2023. So for these past few years, they've had to, go about knowing that people are judging them, that someone has accused them of something as serious as kidnapping and rape, and, just waiting to ultimately be vindicated. And so, this also just goes to show the importance of having solid legal counsel on your side. And my props and respect to these lawyers who clearly fought hard for their clients, believed in their clients. I love the law. I'm going into my 15th year practicing law, and I love this profession. I love helping people, and I really love seeing good lawyering. I love seeing excellent lawyers advocate for their client. I love sitting in on trials and watching other lawyers do their thing. If you love the profession, then you love to see that, right? And I just know that these guys were under a lot of pressure in this case. It's one thing to represent somebody who, is accused of a crime, and they may have done it, right? They may not have done it to the extent they're being charged. They did something, but it's different when you're representing an innocent client, right? Because think about it. These guys got arrested. They got charged with a crime, and this case did not get dismissed, right? So there's a prosecutor who felt like they had enough evidence to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. And I'm sure, I can guarantee you that these defense attorneys were negotiating and seeking to reach an agreement with this prosecutor, trying to tell him, hey, listen, our clients didn't do this. This is just wrong. This is a false accusation. These guys had to go all the way through trial in order to clear their name. And so the reality is, you just never know what a jury is going to do, and you're confident, right? You're going to prepare. You know the case like the back of your hand. You know all the evidence. You know the witnesses you're going to call. You know the witnesses the DA is going to call. You are prepared. Your opening statement, your closing argument, your cross-examinations, all of that. You may prepare everything, but you never know what a jury is ultimately going to do. And so for them to have believed in their client, deciding that they were going to push this case through and fight in trial and ultimately get this victory, is definitely commendable. I mean, I'm sure there's some lawyers out there who they could have represented these guys and tried to convince them to take a deal. Hey, this girl's accusing you of kidnapping and rape. You're facing over 30 years if you get convicted, and you'll have to register as a sex offender. And I'm sure they might have caved. They might have caved to that pressure, right? If you have a lawyer telling you, hey, you don't have a shot at trial because this girl's going to take the stand and she's going to say that you did these things to her, right? And that's a scary prospect. But, thank God, thank these lawyers. I'm really glad that this turned out this way. I'm very sorry to these guys that they had to go through this, that their families had to go through this, seeing their loved ones' names being dragged through the mud. But, all's well that ends well. It sounds like these two guys have really good heads on their shoulders, and they're looking forward to a bright future ahead of them. Let me know what you think about this case. Leave me some comments below. I always appreciate those. And, if you got something out of this video, please show me some love and hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. And as always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.